The power supply box has been buttoned up, but if you look closely, there's another plug that's been added before we closed it up. Well, what the heck is the second plug for? We had everything ready here. All we had to do is plug it into the radio. Well, the way I had this thing set up, the B- line right here and the A+ line here were connected to the switch on the radio. So whenever I shut the switch off, it would shut off, and whenever I turn the switch on, it would turn on, because that's what supplied the power from the output of the power supply. In other words, I was controlling the operation of the radio from the output of the power supply. Well, I thought that was cool. Everything worked out fine, I'll show you that switch connection here in a minute. Anyway, old Brendan chimed in. He said, well, that's wonderful, John. You got that thing there all hooked up real good and all. But you're still getting power into the entire power supply here from the wall. This thing is sitting here cooking away. The only thing you did was eliminate the output. Okay, yeah, all right, that makes sense. So, basically it was, what are you going to do about that, boy? That's okay. We had originally discussed this previously, and I thought he wanted I thought he was recommending that you shut off the output, you putting these two connections on the switch. When you shut the switch off, there's no complete circuit anymore because it's open. But what he was talking about was putting the input of the power supply, hook it to the switch, whereas everything shuts down. And I said, well, okay. And I realized what he had told me. It just didn't, I think it occurred to me at the time what he was talking about, but somehow blew out of my mind. I was so involved with all this other stuff. Anyway, I said, okay, fine. Now, how do I go about doing that? What do I do with these two that I'm going to, obviously disconnect from the switch? And how do I connect the switch into here and get everything working fine? So let me show you the switch, and then I'll show you what we did. Now I'm going to try to make this a short video. Every time I predict that we have one more video to go, it never comes about. There's always one or two more. I'm going to stop saying that we only have one more video to go. I'm just not going to say it anymore. Anyway, this was the way the battery connections were originally hooked up. You'll see that the B- and the A+ come up here to a switch, and then when you close the switch, what it did was it created a ground. It grounded both of these, enabling the batteries to work. So what I did was take in the output of the power supply that I showed you, this section right here, this B- and this A+, these two lines. I connected those two lines to here, and when we flipped the switch, it provided the ground, did exactly the same thing. Okay? So what happened was, like I said, everything was fine going out, but coming in, we still had all that juice, still making those transformers, do their thing and all that. Well, what we finally did was take the A+ and the B- lines, connect them together, and just run them straight to ground. Okay? We disconnected them from the switch and ran them straight to ground. And then we disconnected the ground from the switch also, and just found a convenient grounding point, and ran everything together on the ground. Now what that did was leave me with a bare switch. I now have a bare switch. There's no grounding connection here and here, and there's no B- connection here, and there's no A+ connection here. Because what was originally there are now hooked to ground. So now I'm sitting there with a bare switch, and all I had to do was cut into the power line coming in just before the fuse, and hook one side of the switch here and one side of the switch here. Now I'm controlling the entire power supply. I'm hoping this is making some sense. Remember, when I disconnected the ground from this point and this point, and I disconnected the B- and the A+ from this point and this point, and then just ran them over to a different grounding point, because this is not connected to the switch at all, and this is not connected to the switch, not to the switch, but they go over to the ground instead. So those are permanently grounded instead of being grounded by the switch, on off, on off, on off. And I put the power line across the switch. Actually, what we did, Brendan said, you know, for better current handling capability, why don't you connect these two together first? You know, just kind of connect these two together, and then put one side of your, since we got them both connected together, they can handle more current now, and that way you can hook one side to here and one side to there, which gives us our on-off. Makes sense? I hope so. One more thing. I didn't actually take both of these wires and run them to ground. To me that seems silly. Why not just connect them together down here somewhere and then just run one wire up to ground? Until next time, this is John, when this thing will definitely be wrapped up, because I think we've only got one more video.